We are going to talk about that other burning issue that everyone really cares deeply about, CNAP. And we've got a great panel. Some of the most influential people in the cybersecurity space at the moment. To my left is Tony Scott, CIO at the White House. Are you taking resumes tonight for the CISO?
We just closed, actually.
Okay, too bad. Okay.
Sorry, we're taking resumes.
Yeah.
Okay, resumes go over here to DHS.
We got a lot of other jobs open, though.
All right. So to the left of him is Suzanne Spaulding, Undersecretary at DHS. And Stephen Ward, who is at TIAA, which used to be TIAA-CREF.
Yes, no more CREF.
No more CREF. If anyone knew that there was no more CREF, we would buy you a drink afterwards. Yeah. So let's just start with Tony. You've been in government for a year now. Wise decision? Or
yes. Yeah, it's, as I've said before, this is, to me, both the challenge of a lifetime, but also the opportunity of a lifetime. And I work with a bunch of really smart people, and I feel like we're really making a positive impact as we do our work. So I'm having a ball.
All right, a lot's happened over the past year.
You bet.
And, we all know that, I guess last week or the week before, Obama announced the CNAP, the Cybersecurity National Action Plan.
Correct.
Comes along with a big price tag, $19 billion. What's that money going to get us, the broader us? How is that going to protect us better?
Well, the $19 billion is the amount of money that the federal government is spending on cyber broadly across the government. Specifically mostly in IT areas. It's greater than a 30% increase year on year, and so it's a pretty significant marker that continues to progress the work that the administration's been doing for a long time. So I'm pleased to see the proposal, and now we just need a lot of help in Congress to get it passed.
All right. So a lot of the plan talks about two things. One, software upgrades, and two-factor. Pretty basic things, right? Do you feel like what else do you want to do over the next year to get the government more secure?
Well, there's a bunch of things that we proposed. The first one was the modernization fund. Mm-hmm. So one of the problems that we know is we've got a bunch of really old, outdated technology, and there hasn't been a good way to get the funding in place to begin the upgrade and replacement of that. And that's core to the proposals. But we also announced a bunch of other things as well, which was funding for more scholarships and to work on the very real problem of getting enough of the right talent and skills into the government. We announced the commission that'll make some long-term recommendations that'll carry on into the next administration, and the federal CISO role. So there's a whole bunch of good things in there that I think make a significant exclamation point on the work that's already been going on.
What do you want from these guys out here, this crowd, the private sector?
I think there's three things that we need to focus on. One is get highly aligned around being serious about focusing on these critical issues. And it's people, it's technology, and it's changing some of the processes that we have in the federal government. And we all got to get aligned around that. And I actually have felt tremendous support from the industry. There's not anybody who's come in my office and said, you're doing the wrong things, or we think you should do something 180 degrees different. So I personally have felt tremendous support.
Let's drill down just a little bit. Give me you said you want to change some processes. Give me a specific, one thing you would change tomorrow if you could.
Well, the big one is part and parcel of our modernization efforts. The easiest money to get today is to keep the old stuff running. The hardest money to get is the money to actually go replace something.
Right.
And so we need strong support for the notion that one of the ways that we're going to get better about cybersecurity is to go replace some of the really old, outdated, expensive to defend and hard to defend platforms that we've got. And at the RSA conference here, I saw tons of great technology and solutions from the industry that if we could get them in place, would go a long way to help us.
No one's still running Windows XP in the federal government, are they?
They're not supposed to be, but you know, we're a big government, so I've learned not to be too surprised.
So Suzanne, what's the message you've come out here with for the private sector? You guys, DHS, are involved in quite a bit with the National Action Plan, specifically around information sharing. The broader private sector community is a little bit skeptical when it comes to information sharing, especially around liability issues and privacy concerns. So what's your message to them? What do you need at DHS to make that work?
Yeah, so my message would be that we really need to embrace this sharing of cyber threat indicators and cyber threat information. We have a huge issue of scale here that we're confronting, and this is one of the ways to address it. And we see the private sector doing this. We see it in the Cyber Threat Alliance and the Facebook Exchange and the other groups that are coming together to share information that was once held very tight as proprietary information. A growing recognition that we must scale as the internet is scaled. And that's what this automated information sharing under CISA is designed to foster. So it provides that liability protection, not just for sharing with the National Cybersecurity Communication Integration Center, the NCIC, which is our ops center at DHS, and will serve as the portal for bringing that information together so that we can get a common operating picture and then we send it out to everyone in real time. But it also gives you that liability protection for sharing with each other, private to private. Even if you never send it to the government. And that's because we think it is so important to be sharing that information. We would obviously like all these networks to be connected, to be a network of network. The idea is that if we can get that information out at machine speed, the adversary who today can use the same tactics, techniques, and procedures over and over and over again, if we could get that information out the first time it's seen, that adversary might be able to get away with it once, but only once. And that would be a significant advance. And that's really what this is about.
So what are your assurances when it comes to protecting private data that could be swept up in some of this information that
Well, the best way to protect private data is to limit the amount of it which you gather. So we start by having a structured format that we believe really reduces significantly the likelihood that we're going to get personally identifiable information or sensitive privacy information that is not part of a cyber threat indicator, that is not necessary to understand the threat. So it starts with that, but then when it comes in, we also do a privacy scrub. And anything that is not, again, doesn't meet that standard gets cut out, gets deleted, and it does not get retained. The industry has responsibility to do a scrub at the front end, and we've just put out guidelines to help do that. We have that obligation. Government entities with whom we share have another obligation to look at that privacy again. We have built this automated information sharing program from the ground up with our privacy folks right there. Our privacy impact assessment statement is posted online. There are regular privacy compliance. And of course, the whole system has been built with security first and foremost in mind.
All right, Stephen, so you're the private sector guy on this panel. What do you think about what Suzanne is saying in terms of information sharing? Is it going to be as successful as the government hopes it will be?
I think it will be, but I mean, I'd like to, for a second just ask the audience, how many people in the room think that threat and intel should be free? Right?
All right, so hold on.
I agree with you.
Ask the question one more time, a little bit louder. We'll get everyone's attention. We have a question for the crowd.
So folks, how many people think threat and intel should be free?
What's that? Not quite.
So 10, 15? I think it should be free.
They make a lot of money off it.
Yeah.
A lot of people make money off of
Plus
threat
they're
intel
drinking,
here.
so you never know.
That's a valuable commodity you want to give away.
I just think it should be free.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be a lot more successful if you can normalize it, right? Sticks, taxi, things like that. And I think it should be free. There's no other type of threat and intel information that's used in the physical world or anywhere else that costs me money. And I think the fact that we've been able to commoditize that has caused a number of companies to pop up, provide threat and intel feeds that's been watered down, and in a lot of ways we call it exhaust. There's a lot of threat and intel that's out there that becomes exhaust for us. So I think centralizing it, making it free, and having someone, whether it's private or public sector, doesn't really matter. I think it should be free, and I think it would be much more successful if it was.
You bring up an interesting point that I want to just drill down on for a second. The threat intel business is one of these things. Every day you sort of see a new company popping up that seems like they have a crystal ball to tell you what threats you should be worrying about. Is that something that, are you getting pitches from those companies all the time? And
yeah,
do you use the company? Do you guys use somebody like that?
They come and go. We use them. Some stay, some don't, right? Depending on the value of them. But we deal with enough noise in our operations teams on the amount of alerts that we get. Having the threat and intel noise coming with it is just exaggerating the problem for us.
So this federal CISO, you're CISO. So what advice do you have to the person who's coming into that job? You didn't apply, did you?
No, I'm smarter than that. You
probably make way more than
look, 9 years in the Secret Service, so I'm a government guy at heart, and 4 years in the Coast Guard before that. So, I consider myself a government guy.
We take you back in a heartbeat.
It's a tough job. Anytime you're kind of breaking ground like that, you're going to have your challenges. I think when you couple that with the amount of money that's being given to them, we've all been through these huge IT initiatives, these big transformations. The first one's always the hardest. So I wouldn't want to be the first one, maybe the second or third, right, as some things get ironed out. But I think it's phenomenal, right? We've done this in the sector. We've had CISOs out there for a long time. We've positioned them on where they should report, and whether it's a board level position, reporting to a CEO. I think the government's following. It's following along, and I would love to have a CISO in the government that I could call and that I could collaborate with that kind of has that oversight and view over all of them.
So we actually ran a poll on Passcode asking people if they thought the new CISO would have a real impact. And I was a little surprised because we poll a skeptical group of cybersecurity in the cybersecurity and privacy community, but 70% said yes, they thought they could move the needle. However, many said we're starting at a very low bar. So perhaps anyone could make a difference. So Tony, you're going to be very involved with the new CISO. What are going to be your marching orders for the person when they get in that job?
Well, first of all, I think it's a tremendous role. And I think the first person in the role is going to have a great opportunity to show what can be done in the role with the right leadership and the right collaboration with all the agencies that we work with. I think we have a tremendous opportunity to make a really big difference across the federal government. And I think if you get the role, you're going to come in at a time where he or she is going to have the broadest support for that role that will ever exist in our history, frankly. Because I think everybody agrees there's a lot to do. We've done a lot already, but the things that we can do are even bigger. And so I think it's a great opportunity for somebody to come in, help shape that, work directly with our CIOs and the CISOs across the federal government, and really make a contribution to where we go.
So I wanted to also jump to another topic. I'm not sure where we are in time, frankly, but maybe Steven can tell me.
Somebody will give us the
Yes, they'll give the cane. But Ukraine. I think DHS recently put out a report on Ukrainian cyber attack that shut down power to a portion of that country. It had been speculated that that was the work of malicious hackers, and you guys basically confirmed that. Is that an example of how can you use that particular case as an example of how information sharing would work? Is this something that you then, do you know enough now to say, put that out to critical infrastructure operators?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is exactly what we're trying to do. and it's critically important. This was a big deal. I mean, this was a sophisticated and coordinated attack that for the very first time brought down critical infrastructure upon which civilian populations depend. And 225,000 people were without power. Now, the Ukrainians were able to get back up after about 6 hours or so, but they did so by falling back on redundant physical, mechanical systems. They still are still running in a degraded fashion, and that was December 23rd. So their systems, as far as we understand it, are still not fully restored. The adversary used kill disk, wiped those systems, and a number of techniques that we know how to mitigate against. We know how to prevent the kinds of things that they did. So we put out an alert in our secure portal, and those of you who are not members of that, I'd encourage you to become members of our industrial control system portal. But then we also put out a public alert about this cyber attack on critical infrastructure with mitigation and told people about all of the things that are out there, the signatures, the Yara signature, et cetera, the steps that people can take. And I'm really hoping that CEOs will read this, because this is not just about the electric sector, this is about water, this is about transportation, this is about any manufacturing, anyone who uses industrial control systems. And these things, we know how to mitigate against these.
I mean, are we at a point now where it's only a matter of time before we see something like that happen in this country?
I think this Rubicon has been crossed. And I think once you have an attack like that, I think it's more likely that you will have another.
So I got the 5-minute sign. I wanted to talk to Stephen about one idea we had talked about before this, about stopping or not using the term cybersecurity so much, maybe even killing it altogether. Yeah. This crowd should be interested in that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
All right. Yeah, I mean, look, I think that we, and it's not a popular view, especially at events like this, right? Because you're constantly talking about new technology. You're constantly hearing about next-gen advanced this, right? I think we lost focus of the basics, and I think we forgot to complete the things that we started. Things around, I mean, it was just up here, identity access management, controls in general, and tuning the controls that you have and before you buy new ones that you can't operationalize. And I think that we're putting this sort of wrapping this word cybersecurity around a lot of what we're doing, and we're forgetting about what we should be focusing on related to IT, related to risk, right? Risk is sort of a bad word when you mix it with cyber, but it is truly around understanding your security posture, understanding your risk posture, and getting as much as you can out of the controls that you have. We are becoming an industry that just stacks technology on top of technology on top of technology, and we are not operationalizing any of it. And then we're complaining that the exhaust and output of those things are overwhelming. I just feel like we're moving too quickly. We're not finishing what we started, and that we're kind of okay with getting 50% out of things when we should be getting 70, 80, 90 out of them.
Interesting. Tony, I'll leave it with you. Last thoughts or big ideas for what you want to leave with the RSA community from Washington?
Well, I want to create a little bit larger context, and I think it goes to some of the issues that you are addressing. We got lucky last year as well, and we got a law called FATARA passed. And it provides for greater visibility, greater transparency, greater accountability, and really, at the end of the day, better governance in the federal agencies for IT. And I think that is going to help us go a long way to address a more risk-based view of this and not just the technical aspects. So I agree. I think you got to look at this in a much more bigger context than just some technology solve. That said, there is more we can do on the tech side as well.
And I do want to sort of throw it out to the audience to see anybody out there have a question, anybody want to try to get a last-minute application in to the DHS, or maybe we can slip Tony some money. I should never say that to a White House. Yes. Sorry. Yes,
No,
I didn't say that.
I didn't hear it.
Yeah. Or we're going to talk about best restaurants in San Francisco.
I have a question for Tony.
Sorry, go ahead.
Tony, FISMA metrics, how far will that take agencies in terms of improving their risk management posture?
Did you hear that?
Couldn't hear the question.
So actually, ask it without the mic.
Yell into that thing.
FISMA metrics, how will that do?
I'll try again.
FISMA metrics.
How far will FISMA metrics take agencies to a better risk management posture?
Well, the question's about the FISMA metrics. One of our roles is to gather metrics across the federal government for FISMA and even for other reasons that try to help us make good policy and implementation decisions. So we're looking at all of those things, mostly with a view towards what can help us the most. One of the complaints I hear from agencies is we ask a lot of stuff that's not actionable. And so we're going to focus on that and try to make sure that no matter what we do, that the data we gather, we can justify in terms of being able to do something, cause better policy, and help the agency as well. So I wouldn't limit it just to FISMA, but it's a great question.
Anybody else have questions for our esteemed panelists? Or you are all just drinking far too much? All right, I guess that's it. Thanks for coming. Thanks to you guys. It was great.
Appreciate it.